Welcome to Forge the Man. Professional excellence meet vocational clarity. We help Catholic men sanctify their work and find their mission, whether you are called to build a family or serve the kingdom in the world as a single man. The forge is hot and the hammer's ready. Let's get to work. Today we'll be joined by Dana Cruz, an attorney who works for the state of California in the judicial system. He did his undergraduate work at UC Berkeley and then went to law school at UC Davis. Dana, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be with you.
Dana, why don't you just introduce yourself to us a few minutes here so we get to know you?
Sure. So I am an attorney. I work for the state judiciary, as you mentioned, specifically up here in Sacramento in California. But let me unpack that a little bit further about what that entails. So I am a governmental affairs attorney specifically, which means that I am involved in a lot of the crafting of legislation that impact the courts here in the state of California. I help negotiate bills. I help craft bills. I sometimes will take positions to oppose or support a bill. But before that, I was also a fiscal policy advisor for the two California governors Jerry Brown and Governor Gavin Newsom. I was a civil servant, but providing fiscal policy advice when it came to issues like housing and homelessness, labor, workforce development, capital outlay or state assets. And then before that, I was also a legislative aide for a state senator in the state Senate. And then I guess one way to sum it all up is I've been involved in a lot of the kind of all branches of government of policy making, which has been really exciting for me. Also to mention too is that I am a military lawyer. I serve part-time volunteer as a judge advocate in the California State Guard, where I provide a lot of legal assistance services for our troops and our soldiers and airmen deployed throughout the world, helping to make sure that their situations in order as they serve our country, so to speak, of serving those who serve. And I guess maybe in the most lawyerly way, I must say that I'm happy to be here. But just to put a full lawyerly disclaimer, everything I say here is my own personal opinion, not to be attributed to certainly the state of California or the California Military Department.
You know, one thing I did forget to mention that you just recently graduated from the Harvard Kennedy School. You got a master's degree in public administration.
I did. I did. It was an amazing experience. It's a year-long program, but I did this specific pathway that allowed me to complete it within 6 months. So I actually just graduated, gosh, a month ago. I'll be back in Cambridge, Boston, in a few months so that I could walk across the stage with my classmates. But it was such an amazing experience, and even more so for me because I come from a pretty working class environment. Both my parents are children of immigrant from pretty poor areas of the Philippines. My dad in particular. I mean, he came from a province where people were living on a landfill. So the idea to come from that to their son going to, obviously an institution like Harvard is I think, really a testament to the American dream.
Well, it's incredible. Dana, first, when you were 18 years old, I don't know what your dreams were, but did you think you would end up where you're at now? And then maybe tell us, like, did your thoughts back then match up with the reality today?
Yeah, I definitely I didn't always want to be a lawyer. In fact, the first thing I wanted to be was a doctor. In my family, I thought the notion of serving people was always there. I think part of that was guided certainly by my Catholic faith, but also the idea of helping heal people of their ailments. So I went into high school thinking I was going to become a doctor. I applied to college, to Berkeley, going into biology as a pre-med major. But other things came in their way, and specifically, I started to take chemistry, and I think it became quite clear that perhaps the sciences were not exactly my forte. So I think the lesson there was, while I struggled a lot in chemistry, I found myself doing very well in things like social studies or history, some of the humanities classes. I found that I really enjoyed the idea of debate and argumentation, not for the sake of being combative, but for the sake of getting towards the truth of things, the heart of the matter of things. My mom knew that I loved to debate, much to her annoyance. And I also found that for whatever reason, my passion and my goals, my skills made sense, perhaps going down this route instead. So, right around the first year of college is when I decided to switch towards becoming a lawyer, going on a pre-law path instead. So, I think for those of the listeners out there who might be interested in the law or really anything else, I would say from my own experiences, when you're making decisions like this, try to see if it makes sense in both your head and your heart. Is your heart there in the sense that you have a certain passion or talent for it? And does it also make sense in your head that it makes sense that you can actually do well in this respective profession or vocation. So I ultimately went down that path, and I actually didn't think I was going to be doing what I'm doing now, at least not so quickly. I thought I was going to be a criminal prosecutor. I wanted to be the guy that was very much um, protecting victims and really trying to hold people to account for things that they did. And I think this stemmed from as a child, I always had this greater sense of justice. Like, I didn't like being picked on. I didn't like other people being picked on. I thought that, justice was such a big thing for me. And I thought it completely translated in my head and my heart towards going down that direction. But ultimately, after law school, and I can talk about this further in the interview, uh, I, there were certain doors that opened and others that did not. And one that did open was this pathway to policy. And so that's what led me down to where I'm at today.
Can you speak to like your high school preparation and then also your at when you were at Berkeley, like what type of student were you? And for persons that might want to follow your path, what kind of student do you have to be? Can you speak to like your how would you say preparation for law school?
Yes. So the whole pathway. So for me, to answer your direct question first, is I think I was a pretty studious student. I was probably, to be very frank, you're overachieving nerd. I was very much involved in a whole bunch of things. So I was a student body president in student government. I was involved in the Mu Alpha Theta, which was a math club. I was involved in community service clubs. I played golf. I was in marching band. I played the tenor saxophone and also performed at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, by the way. So you can find me on YouTube for that 5-second Passover. Um, and then I was also someone who was really trying to focus on my studies, and I think that came from my own parents who were very much about education's important, focus, study hard. Which is not to dissuade anyone who may not have the same say temperament of things, but I do think that if you want to go down the path towards law, it takes a certain amount of discipline and virtue that certainly is helpful to have at the beginning when you're a student in high school, and very much so when you went into college. So I think to your other question about like preparing for Berkeley, I'm not an admissions person, but what I can sense is that Berkeley likes to find well-rounded students. So they want to see that they have a good academic record, but they also have a kind of a proven other extracurriculars that make them well-rounded to show that they would be great to have in their classes. So again, for your listeners out there, applying to any type of school, always put yourself in the shoes of the admissions folks to see, okay, how can I best pitch myself? They obviously want someone who's going to enrich the conversations that are being had so you have a full academic environment where you could actually learn and have a more thoughtful, deliberative discussion. So for me specifically to Berkeley, I thought they wanted well-rounded students, and they like that. And then similarly for law school, at that point, they want to see that you have a certain amount of maturity, that your academic record stands up to muster, that you're going to handle the great demands of law school, and that you will be able to again contribute in a way to the discussions, because law school is very much a discussion based program. You're going to go into class having read probably 200 hundreds of pages a week, if not a night, and you're going to be called right on this, not stand so to speak, but you're going to be called out in class to defend what you're saying. It's called the Socratic method. So there's a lot of work to go in there, and happy to unpack that further for those who want to go down that path specifically.
Dana, do you have to have like a high IQ? I mean, can you kind of speak to like the qualities? Okay, let's say you weren't a serious student in high school, but like what are the attributes or qualities or traits that you need to be able to survive like an academic institution like Berkeley and also to go to law school?
Yeah. I definitely think that you should have. I think if there's anything to take away from this interview, I think is always going to be that virtue and discipline go far, by far, anything more than anything. I mean, you could be someone who's certainly off the charts brilliant, but if you're not working hard, if you're not going to put in the effort to do something, then you're not going to necessarily succeed. Um, Having intelligence is a great asset to have. Certainly something someone should aspire to and be knowledgeable. But if you definitely put in the work, that's important. Because again, think about it. If you're a lawyer and you have a client, they're going to want someone who's going to be zealously advocating for their interest, for them. That's going to go toe to toe and fight for them, which means that they have the stamina, the persistence, and the diligence to do so. And so that I think by far and away is the most important thing to have. But yes, at Berkeley and then at law school, I think again this idea of, and I think it starts actually in high school too. I want to say like delayed gratification. that sometimes you have to make sacrifices in order for you to succeed in certain things. So instead of opening up TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat or hanging out with friends at a party, it might behoove you instead to spend an hour or two studying something, doing homework, getting ahead of things. There's a quote, I think it was Michael Jordan. Someone obviously very successful. He said, "I do today what others aren't doing, so I can do tomorrow what others can't." I mean, there's such a truth to that you when you take that discipline, that sets you up in a very good position to advance yourself, and more importantly, to advance the people that you're trying to serve in your respective profession and career. So I definitely think discipline is the most important. Studying hard, making sacrifices, being prudent and virtuous in what you decide to do.
Well, that's great. Great to hear that advice. What about outside help? Did you have a mentor? Your parents were the instrumental, a friend, a teacher? How would that play a part in shaping your trajectory to get through to your goal?
Yes, I mean, I'm a firm believer that you are a product of your environment, of the people you surround yourself with. So if you want to be a good person, then you should surround yourself with good people. If you want to be, so to speak, a saintly person, you should surround yourself with people who are striving to be saints. Um, so certainly my parents, who are, great folks, certainly played a part in helping raise me to be a very disciplined, studious, driven person. But also, I think having great friends, friends that were very driven like me, that inspired me, that kind of helped me to kind of fight the good fight with them. But even more importantly, just thinking beyond the profession, having, I think, almost a mentor. That's another tip I would say is important to have. Always finding a good mentor in whatever stage or state of life that you find yourself in, because those are the people that are going to be able to help you in kind of almost all facets of your life. You know, the professional, the personal, the emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, so to speak. And I would suggest that you find a mentor who's going to be able to keep you grounded, to kind of call you out for when you need to get called out, call you to account when you need to get called out, and make you a better person. I think the idea of this, self-actualization, is, I think, a big part of kind of my life mission, in the sense that when I was in college, I learned this idea of it, we called it live zero space. Basically, you are here and you want to go here. And you want to continue to bridge that gap so that you eventually have zero space between where you are and where you want to be. In other words, to self actualize and become the best version of yourself. So, having a mentor that's going to help you live zero space to get you where you want to be, I think is pivotal, in your life.
It doesn't sound I mean, just from talking to you, it doesn't sound like you've met much failure, but I think all of us have. Can you talk about handling failure?
Yes, that is, I can attest to you. I can confirm to you that I, in fact, experienced failure quite a bit. And I think the most successful people are those who failed a lot. I think they're, again, as you can tell, I love basketball and I love Michael Jordan. I think he's by far the GOAT, more than LeBron James. But anyway, that's another podcast. He said, I think, something effective like, I've missed the winning shot like hundreds of times. I've like failed 1,000 times, and that is why I succeed. I think the idea is that there's been, so like, those who want to succeed into, doing great things or what have you, should not be afraid to fail. And yes, it's humbling, it's humiliating, it's not pleasant. But that fact is that you put yourself out there into the arena, you develop this sense of grit, which I think there's an Ivy League professor that she studied what determines the most success in people, and she looked at people from all different sectors of society, and she found that it was grit, which is like this persistence and devotion to one specific mission and focus, and continuing to go after it, beginning and beginning again, even if failures happen. So yes, specifically to my life, there have been many moments where I've applied for something in an interview or job, didn't get it, and been told in almost overt ways of like, no, this isn't. I've been literally told to my face, you are not a serious candidate. Very hurtful things, or at least you need to have some tough skin. I've been told even some very personal things too. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Um, I don't look good enough. Things of that nature. I've had to deal with these types of things, from the get go. And I alluded to it earlier, where I said some doors open, others close. There are blessings in disguise. Things happen for a reason, and I think if you're someone who believes in that sense of like things happening for a reason, then you can learn to kind of go with the flow in terms of when things don't go your way. You kind of, in a jujitsu way, kind of lean into it and grow stronger and thrive from it. So to speak, I wanted to be a prosecutor, right? I wanted to work at a DA's office, a district attorney's office here in California after law school. Um, I was applying for an internship that would allow me to go down that path. I didn't get it, and I was devastated. I'd spent, basically 2, 3 years getting ready for that, going down that path, preparing everything for that path, and it didn't work out. So I was devastated. And at the same time, I would say the next day, I got a call for an internship to work for what's called Legislative Counsel's office here in Sacramento. They're the lawyers who draft the statutes and laws, and they're the lawyers for the legislature. And I'd spent some time in high school kind of interning for government. So the idea of policy was always appealing to me, and was kind of what I did in college anyway. Um, so I saw, I was like, "Oh, great, we'll see." I mean, it was something that it piqued my interest, but again, wasn't my plan. But I did the internship, and quite frankly, that was probably the best internship I had, and it opened down these doors that allowed me to eventually go down to the career that I'm in now, which is very unique for a lawyer, I think. But you're dealing with a lot of policy. You're dealing with things that you're literally drafting solutions, innovative solutions that impact 40 million Californians of the fourth largest economy in the world that are often first in the nation models. So I'm very grateful for these types of things. But yes, failure is also the name of the game.
Yeah, let's speak to bad advice. What's the worst piece of advice that you've been given regarding your career?
Oh, that's a great question. What is the word? hmm, the worst piece of advice. I think there's this idea that w- we often go, like, how do I put it? I'll give the converse. So like the advice would be this: if you seek glory over excellence, I think the more important thing is that you should seek excellence over glory, right? I think there are folks who are going to always look for the most prestigious thing, and there's some value to that. I get that, but I don't want to. You don't want to assign more weight to it than it needs to be. Um, but always pursue something where you're going to be able to do your best, and wherever you find yourself at, always do your best. Do work that's worthwhile. Put your best effort, and I think from that, especially for younger folks, I remember myself just starting in the early part of my career where, you wanted to, ascend, climb the ladder so quickly and do all these great things. I get that. You're ambitious. But if you're doing good work, that will become your reputation. That in itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of the glory that you really shouldn't seek anyway for your own like mental, humble, grounded self of your ego. But in any case, seek excellence over glory. And I'll also add this on too as a piece of advice, not bad advice, actually great advice that attaches on to the previous question. Again, I worked for a state senator as a legislative aide, and one of the advice she told me, going back to grit, because she was a trailblazer. She was the highest ranking Vietnamese American in the country. She was a refugee. She fled Vietnam during the fall of Saigon. She said, and she came from a really rough, like tough political environment. She said, "Dana, life is like a jungle, and you are like a tiger that's like crawling, prowling through the jungle. And there'll be many times where the other animals up in the trees are throwing a bunch of crap at you to stop you. Ignore it. Ignore and keep going towards the prize." And that stuck with me. I mean, there's again that grit of like knowing that you have a worthwhile goal and continuing to strive for it, beginning and beginning again. That I think is so important in this field, and again, with whatever profession you decide to go down.
Dana, what about networking? Strategy. Did you employ that early in high school, in college, law school? Is that of value to a young person trying to aspire to be a lawyer?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say relationships. I'd almost go far to say relationships are key in the legal profession, and everything else is secondary. Which might sound scandalous, but the fact of the matter is that it's true because not that it's going to displace the fact that you need to know your job, you need to know what you need to do, you need to be competent. But oftentimes I found that building relationships is so key because, say, especially in my profession right now, if I need to talk to the committee staff, to a senator or his staff, his chief of staff, if I have that relationship, it makes it easier when I need to make certain arguments or try to convince them to go one way or another on a piece of legislation, or to again advocate for a certain position. Which is funny for me because I'm a pretty outgoing person, but in high school I found myself to be quite shy and introverted. But and I still am to some degree, but I do think that there is great value. I actually made up this mantra in law school that it's network or no work. You need to get to know people. And more importantly, to take it beyond just that, to look at the bigger picture. You're not just getting to know people to be transactional, to use them. No, you're getting to know them because we're social animals. You want to get to know them to be a good friend, a good person to them. Help them in any way, and maybe they'll help you as well. Going beyond again the transactional part of that. So definitely I think relationships are key, building that. And I think it's so important, especially for younger generations today, which I get after having grown up with Zoom and we're being glued to our phones a lot more, it's so much more difficult to develop those social skills that I think are so instrumental and indispensable. But certainly, relationships are important, with your client, with your adversary, with the judge you're going to be presenting before, or the lawmaker you're going to have to talk to. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Yeah, very good advice. Dana, what's the routine, your daily routine as a lawyer? Like if somebody to be in your shoes or to shadow you, what would they see you daily do? Are you in court? Are you
Mhm.
behind a desk? Are you having meetings? What do you do?
Right. Well, so it is a very dynamic schedule. So most days you never it could change really. Because my work right now is more in the political policy realm. So a lot of times there's a lot of reacting to something that's happening, in the society, or like say the governor wants to do this new initiative he wants to do. For instance, one of the areas I handle is called the CARE Act, which is this kind of new first in the nation model as a three-branch initiative, meaning the legislative, judicial, and the executive branch are all involved in it. Where, as we are aware, especially in California, there's a homelessness problem, a problem of people experiencing homelessness. And they created this pathway where, for those who are experiencing homelessness but also have severe mental illness, they they could be referred to a court that would try to see if they basically help manage them to see if they could get connected to um, uh, stabilizing treatment. Um, Something like that. So something like that might pop up on my calendar, and I have to react to it quickly. But specifically, I come in. I'm basically tracking the hundreds of bills moving through the legislature on any given day. I those that do impact the courts, I'm taking it to our staff, my colleagues, but also our judges and attorneys and court executives throughout the state, asking, okay, how is this going to impact the courts? Do we need to take a position on this bill? How, like, what's the cost? All these questions of how, really, how or why. And then I take that information, I take it to our 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 senators or Senate members, or if it's going through various committees like Judiciary Committee or Public Safety Committee or Health Committee, I'm taking it to them to see if we can start to negotiate and change the language a bit in a way that actually might be more effective, certainly for the courts, so they can actually implement it in a way that's feasible. I'm also doing a lot of like what's it called, presenting to various, again, judges and attorneys. I feel like there's a lot of outreach I end up doing. I'm running around quite a bit. We'll have delegations of judges and attorneys from around the world that want to visit and learn about the California courts, so I can be involved in that. But really, it's just dynamic stuff. It's really taking ideas that are meant to help society and helping craft them and form them into something that could be feasible and implementable.
Dana, what about like myths, like what some people think of lawyers? I know there's a number of different variations of lawyers, but can you like maybe debunk some myths or confirm some that are true about lawyers?
We're all crazy. No,
Mhm.
yeah, certainly. Maybe I'll take a step back and give a background for those who are interested and want to know about the general realm of the legal profession. So there are two prisms of which you can look at it. First, there's you could be a transactional lawyer, which means you're typically, behind the desk, you're doing a lot of the behind the scenes work, paperwork, filing motions, contracts, stuff of that nature. And then you have a litigator. So those are the ones you think when you think of, say, Law and Order or like movies, A Few Good Men. Like they're in courtroom, they're arguing, they're presenting. So there's the litigator arguing in court or settling, and then there's the transactional, a lot of the business stuff, or paperwork, behind the scenes type work. Then there's also the prism of criminal law versus civil law. So civil law is typically any type of law that will impact someone's life, where they're gonna, if they say they're gonna file in for a lawsuit, it's to be made whole. So for instance, famous case, like I go to McDonald's and I spill this scalding hot coffee all over me. That would, and I'm suing because I want to be made whole. I was harmed by that. That would be a civil case. Then you have criminal cases, right? And I think we generally have an understanding of what that is, where you've committed something that the legislature has deemed as, a public safety issue, and so there will be consequences for it, which will include the deprivation of life, liberty, so stealing, murder, things of that nature. So a lawyer can be handling any criminal or civil, can be criminal or civil law, and they can be both a transactional or a litigator in both of those. But really, once you go to law school and you do have to pass the bar to practice law in any state. Once you're authorized to do that, really there's a lot of doors that open. You can be, yes, you can be your lawyer that's going to court. And I do that sometimes when I'm in my military service. Or you could be providing legal advice. You could be like a research attorney for a judge or a firm or something like that. You could be an advocate of some way. Um, you could become a judge eventually. Many great lawyers become judges. There really is so many different things, and of course, many lawyers you see also become politicians as well. They tend to run for office. So there's a whole host of things that you could do uh, with a legal profession, with a legal degree.
So, Dana, I would just say here, like, if there was like one action item that you'd give to like some of our audience out there that might want to consider law, what would you advise them to do like today or to start to do?
That's a great question because I'm someone who likes to be very transparent and open and give you the good, bad, and the ugly. Law school is not cheap. Becoming a lawyer is not cheap. Practicing law is not easy. So let me explain about like the things that are involved. So I think if you're going to want to go down this profession, I would say be very clear-eyed and informed about it. There are many folks, and I'm just gonna be really open and frank, who become lawyers and they're not happy. And I think it behooves those who do want to go down this path that they know what they're getting themselves into. Because once you apply to law school, it's like getting on a train that doesn't stop. It gets faster and faster and faster, and then suddenly you're practicing law for 20 years. So be clear-eyed about that, and know that if you are going to commit to the hundreds of thousands of dollars, unless you get a scholarship, which is great, but the thousands of dollars to go to law school and then practice law, that your reason for doing it is compelling enough to bear it. Know your why, so to speak. Um, but what? But so that's the ugly. But why do it? I think you'd want to do it in part because if you love advocating, if you love debating, getting to the truth of things, if you love working with people, especially in this profession, that's a large part of, I mean, a lot of things you're doing is to help some person or some organization that is a client, then that's certainly, and that help them and their way, then it's certainly something that, is a great profession. I mean, if you think about history, think of like these major movers and shakers of history. Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, Thomas Jefferson, all of them were lawyers. And I think there's a reason to that, right? There's something to it about how you're able to really help impact society through the legal profession. So if you're thinking about going down this path, again, be aware of the risks, but be aware that while it's very demanding, it's also incredibly rewarding for those who do it. I do know folks who are happy as well, doing what they want to do in law. And this also gets to something as well that in times in life you feel like you hit a fork in the road, and I was very privileged to have a cousin of mine who gave me some really profound advice. She said, Dana, just because people are going one way in one direction doesn't mean you have to. You can chart your own path, you can blaze your own trail, so to speak. And that again got to for me, when I was after finishing law school, I was like, okay, do I want to go into practicing law in your traditional sense, or do I want to practice law but in a more unorthodox kind of policy realm that I'm doing now? I ultimately chose this path that I'm in now because it was something that appealed to me more. That's where the opportunities arose, and I'm very happy doing it. So don't feel like you need to do what everyone else is doing. It's your life, and so you want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, in the way that you want to do it.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for your time. It's really been a pleasure hearing your advice and speaking to your accomplishments. Is there anything you'd like to wrap up to say to our audience and speaking to the law profession, or even if they don't want to be lawyers, some advice about being a good student, seeking mentorship, of outworking the competition?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll do two things. I'll explain again the pathway for those just the bare basics. So if you do want to become a lawyer, graduate high school, go to college. You can do community college and then to college. Um, Graduate with a degree. There's no required major for it. Oftentimes, it's those who are pre-law, political science like myself, English or something, but law schools love having folks of different backgrounds. You go to law school, it's about 3 years. You take the LSAT exam, you do personal statements, treat the personal statements as if they're like an interview of you as a whole person, so they get a better sense of how will this person be in our classroom, and then get good I think however many good letters of recommendation, people who could genuinely vouch for you, not just the most like, not the president of the United States, but like it could be someone who's a supervisor, someone that really can attest to your work ethic and your skill set. And then after that, you then take the bar exam. It's a very demanding, grueling exam, and then you can practice law. So that's a gist. And then you also have to do a background check, make sure you have good moral character, and you take continuing legal education credits so that again you are best equipped to serve those. I think in closing, I would say that, for me, I chose this profession because of service. And I felt that this was the best way in my head and my heart to serve folks. I would suggest to those listeners out there in whatever profession they want to go down, ask themselves, um, in whatever they decide to do, how can they best in their head and their heart best serve? I would suggest. And continue to strive to live zero space, to go from where you are to where you want to be. Life will be full of twists and turns. And there may be oftentimes, like in my life, I'm sure in yours too, Paul, where you want to go down one way and suddenly it changes. And, it sometimes those changes are the best. Life is like a book that's still being written, and there will be plot twists, sometimes devastating plot twists. And if they're devastating, you can only imagine and hope for how amazing the story's going to end. So continue to write those books, make those stories amazing, and I hope that those listening do be inspired to become lawyers and get in the arena, and I'll be right there alongside you all.
Thank you, Dana. Well, thank you for joining us in the Forge today. Discernment isn't a one-time event. It's a daily yes to God's providence. As you navigate your professional growth this week, pray for the courage to follow where he leads, into the deep waters of marriage or dedicated service of the single life. May Mary, the mother of fairest love, be your guide and your protector in the midst of the world.